Picture this. It's a quiet afternoon, and suddenly the headlines erupt like wildfire. Mick Jagger, the charismatic frontman of the Rolling Stones, has finally broken his silence. For decades, he remained tight-lipped about Marianne Faithfull, the enigmatic singer, actress, and his former muse. But today, he shocks the world. Pulling back the curtain on a tangled web of conflicts, scandals, and personal demons that haunted Faithfull's life, the romanticized image shatters, revealing a life steeped in turmoil, betrayal, and self-destruction. You've probably heard the fairy tale version of their story, a young Marianne Faithfull discovered at a Rolling Stones party in the swinging heart of 1916's London. She was ethereal, with delicate features, a haunting voice, and a magnetic charm that captivated everyone in the room. She became Jagger's muse, his lover, and the embodiment of the era's rebellious spirit. But behind the glossy magazine covers and carefree smiles was a relationship riddled with tension, jealousy, and emotional warfare. Their love story quickly spiraled into a toxic mix of passion and pain. Mick and Marianne's world was drenched in excess, fame, drugs, and rock and roll. What looked like glamorous escapades were often fueled by bitter arguments, power struggles, and deep-seated insecurities. Their fights weren't whispered behind closed doors, they were explosive, public, and legendary, leaving friends and strangers alike stunned by their volatility. Think of the infamous 1967 drug bust at Keith Richards' Redlands estate, a scandal that rocked the British tabloids. Marianne was there, wrapped in nothing but a fur rug, becoming an unintentional symbol of the Stones' hedonistic lifestyle. But this wasn't just a shocking photo op, it marked the beginning of her downward spiral. After the bust, Marianne's life unraveled. The drugs weren't just recreational, they became a crutch, a way to numb the emotional wreckage that piled up from her turbulent relationship with Jagger. Their love story decayed under the weight of heroin, betrayal, and emotional neglect. Mick's growing fame only added salt to the wounds, leaving Marianne feeling discarded, used, and broken. Their breakup wasn't a clean cut. It was messy, bitter, and fueled by years of unresolved anger. The scars of their relationship lingered long after the final goodbye, etched into both their personal lives and public personas. But the conflict didn't end with Mick. Marianne's life was a battlefield, strewn with the wreckage of friendships turned sour, alliances destroyed, and relationships that crumbled under the weight of jealousy, betrayal, and self-destruction. Wherever she went, drama followed like a dark shadow, leaving emotional scars and fractured connections in its wake. Her life wasn't just marked by heartbreak, it was defined by it. Her most infamous clash was with Anita Pallenberg, Keith Richards' enigmatic and equally destructive partner. What began as a magnetic friendship between two rebellious women, both muses, both icons, quickly soured into a toxic rivalry. Their bond was a volatile cocktail of jealousy, competition, and simmering resentment, all set against the backdrop of the Rolling Stones' chaotic world. Picture this. Two glamorous, sharp-tongued women locked in a battle for attention, influence, and emotional dominance within the band's inner circle. Their friendship turned into a power struggle fueled by drug-induced paranoia and whispered accusations. Every interaction was laced with tension, every look a silent war cry. The air around them seemed charged, as if one wrong word could ignite an explosion, and often it did. Their confrontations weren't discreet disagreements behind closed doors. They were public spectacles, dripping with venom and bitterness. Parties ended in screaming matches, fueled by a cocktail of drugs, alcohol, and festering grudges. Anita, fiercely protective of her territory within the Stones' orbit, saw Marianne as both a threat and a reflection of her own insecurities. Marianne, on the other hand, resented Anita's manipulative grip on the band and her effortless ability to command attention. Their rivalry was a slow-burning fire, occasionally erupting into full-blown infernos that left everyone around them scorched. But Marianne's struggles with relationships didn't stop with Anita or the Rolling Stones' chaotic entourage. Her conflict extended into the heart of her own family, particularly with her mother, Eva von Secker-Massacre, a stern Austrian baroness whose cold aristocratic demeanor clashed violently with Marianne's rebellious spirit. Imagine the tension. A free-spirited, defiant daughter rejecting the polished, controlled world her mother cherished. Their relationship was a war between generations, values, and identities. Marianne's dive into London's bohemian counterculture wasn't just an escape, it was a rebellion, a middle finger to the expectations that suffocated her throughout her youth. Eva's disapproval wasn't subtle. It was a constant, looming presence in Marianne's life, manifesting in sharp critiques, emotional distance, and an unspoken disappointment that cut deeper than words ever could. Theirs wasn't the dramatic, screaming match kind of conflict. It was colder, more insidious. It was the silence after an argument, the absence of affection, the lingering sense that Marianne was never enough for her aristocratic mother's rigid standards. Years of resentment built a wall between them, brick by brick, with only fleeting attempts at reconciliation crumbling under the weight of unresolved anger. Marianne's life was littered with these fractured relationships, each one leaving an indelible mark on her soul. Friendships turned into rivalries, love stories dissolved into bitterness, and family ties snapped under the strain of unmet expectations. She was a woman both magnetic and polarizing, capable of drawing people in with her charm, only to push them away with the chaos that inevitably followed. In her wake, she left a trail of broken hearts, bitter enemies, and the lingering question, was Marianne Faithfull doomed to destroy every connection she ever made, or was she simply a product of the tumultuous world that shaped her? Marianne Faithfull's personal life wasn't just marked by occasional struggles. It was a relentless descent into darkness, each chapter of her story more devastating than the last. Imagine this, a woman who once graced the covers of Vogue, her face a symbol of ethereal beauty and rebellious charm, now reduced to a shadow of her former self. Once the darling of London's elite, she found herself homeless on the cold, unforgiving streets of Soho. Her beauty faded, her spirit shattered, clinging desperately to survival amidst the echoes of her past fame. Losing custody of her son Nicholas wasn't just a tragic event, it was the ultimate symbol of her downfall. The courts deemed her unfit not because of one mistake, but because of a life spiraling so far out of control that even those closest to her couldn't deny the destruction. Picture her wandering the city's dimly lit alleys, clutching the remnants of her once glamorous life, haunted by the cries of the child she could no longer hold. The woman who once captivated audiences with her haunting voice was now invisible to the world, lost in a haze of addiction and regret. Her battles with heroin weren't fleeting struggles, they were brutal, all-consuming wars. The drug didn't just dull her pain, it became her master, tightening its grip with every injection. Near-fatal overdoses weren't rare, they were almost expected, as if death hovered just around the corner, waiting patiently for its turn. She drifted in and out of rehab clinics, each stay a fleeting hope quickly extinguished by relapse. The sterile walls of rehabilitation centers couldn't contain the chaos inside her, and each failed attempt only deepened the void within her soul. But heroin was just the surface. Beneath the track marks and hollow gaze lurked deeper wounds, psychological scars carved by years of emotional neglect, heartbreak, and self-destruction. Depression wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket, and self-loathing became her constant companion. The glamorous image that once adorned magazine covers was gone, replaced by a woman battling not just addiction but the ghosts of her own making. Even as she clawed her way back into the spotlight, her comebacks were fragile illusions, temporary victories overshadowed by the darkness that refused to let her go. The applause from adoring fans echoed in her ears, but it couldn't drown out the whispers of her past, the voices reminding her of every failure, every heartbreak, every regret. Her achievements, though impressive, were stained with the shadows of her struggles. Each song she sang carried the weight of her pain, each lyric a fragile testament to a woman who had seen too much, lost too much, and hurt too deeply. Her life was a paradox, glamorous and tragic, beautiful and broken. And through it all, Marianne Faithfull remained a haunting figure, her legacy intertwined with both her art and her agony. Despite the chaos, Marianne Faithfull's story isn't just one of destruction, it's also a story of survival. She channeled her pain into her art, her raw, smoky voice carrying the weight of every heartbreak, every betrayal. Her music was a confession, a catharsis, a testament to the woman beneath the scandals, a survivor. But Mick Jagger's shocking revelations pulled back the final curtain, exposing a woman whose life was as tragic as it was iconic. Behind the glamour was a storm. a force of nature that left destruction and inspiration in equal measure. Today, as the world absorbs Mick's damning words, Marianne's complex, controversial legacy echoes louder than ever. Her story is a reminder that legends aren't born from perfection. They're forged in the fires of conflict, carved out of struggle, and immortalized by the scars they leave behind.